Behind these gates of the old rectory at Appleby Magna in Derbyshire is the home of Nottingham trainer Tony Ward. Tony has settled here in an area which has had greyhounds as a central theme for many years. A coat of arms at the house depicts dogs and a rooster, hence Tony's racing prefix. There's acres of land here, a perfect setting for breeding, rearing and training dogs. Underpinning all of it is one of Tony's successful businesses in the fashion industry and his clothing label Worn for the younger, trendier set. Well, that counts me out. But the day job is shared with Tony's real love, and that's across the courtyard and the kennels. This is where many would say the real hard work is done, and Tony's young team are going places. For producer of the dogs, Clive Lawrence, first stop was the snooker room to see if Tony was up to the challenge. Here is a man who is used to winning, in business and in life, and on the snooker table. Well, most of the time anyway.
So Tony, obviously your profession isn't snooker, but you've decided to train greyhounds rather than own them. What got you into a training side of dogs?
I guess through from being a frustrated owner, wanting to know too much a lot of the time, asking silly questions when what's happening next with a dog, etc., etc. But predominantly so I could become hands-on. I have a love of animals and dogs particularly, and wanting to, handle them myself and deal with them in my own way was the biggest single most deciding factor.
Well, Tony, some might say at a tender age of 33, you're a bit young to be a trainer and having a great setup as you have here. I mean, how do you answer some of your potential critics there?
Well, I answer potential critics of that, I suppose, by I was born and bred on a council estate. I've worked hard for everything that I've ever achieved, and equally I'm prepared to work hard at the greyhound side of what I'm doing. I've managed to successfully run a business for 6 years. I've been training dogs for 2.5 years now. I'm trying to make a success of that. You do need some help along the way. You do need some advice along the way. I try and put the right people in the right places at the right times to give me that advice and that help. If you like, it would be me who would be more critical of myself than anyone else, I guess. But I try and use the right help, and that is the most important thing.
Tony has a large string of dogs, all trying to follow the lead of the kennel's best-known dog so far, Lisnakill Cattle, a very decent marathon open racer. He's now retired for injury, but not before helping put Tony on the map.
What do you say to those people that say, new kid in town, he's got lots of money, he thinks he knows better than all of us, and he's now decided to set up his own business? They actually want you to fail, don't they?
I'm sure there are people who do, yeah. I think, people's popular misconception of me is that, I'm kind of this guy who's come in with, like you say, chucking money at the sport and this and that, but it's not true, it really isn't. I've worked from the foundation level, I'm not buying 50 grand dogs, I'm not, out there trying to buy success, I'm trying to build it. Building something doesn't start overnight. You have to work very hard at it, and for the last 2.5 years, that's what we've been doing here,
In such lovely surroundings, Tony and his staff have the perfect base to develop the training operation. What was once a hobby is now a serious business, and more success surely beckons for a young man still willing to learn and work at becoming one of the best in his field, and not for the first time, of course.
Nobody should be frightened of training, because the biggest secret to greyhound training is there is no big secret. And people, really, I'm sure they know that themselves. I think it's quite clear. You might have 5 or 6 things that you keep up your sleeve that are little extras. And like I say, those are the things that, people who've got 20 or 30 or 40 years experience in the game, maybe, Charlie Lister might have 20 things up his sleeve. Well, I might have 6. But I'll find out what the other 14 are over the next 20 years. And, I'm happy to pass that on to my young staff, and hopefully they can, be a trainer in the future and progress in the sport.